Hello folks, and welcome to Linux for Seniors. The video today I have is Linux Mint 21.1 Cinnamon, the installation process and discussions on partitions. This was requested by a new user. So basically I am going to be showing you the full installation process in a virtual manager starting from screen 1. And then I'll talk through some tips along the way. Now, if you do not know anything about my new channel, Linux for Seniors, there are plenty of seniors out there that have a lot of skill sets, and I understand that. But the reason I created Linux for Seniors is basically for newer users, new users to either Linux or Linux Mint or whatever Linux operating system. That's my target audience. My videos are going to be more than 2 minutes, all of them. There's not a single video on my YouTube site that will be under 2 minutes. You know, if you're looking for something short and sweet, I would probably go elsewhere, actually. If you are wanting to learn, though, and in a slower environment with less technical jargon, then I would say subscribe. In the future, I will produce some extra videos on medium to advanced stuff, but not starting off the bat. Again, I just brought this channel online less than a month ago. I'm already up to 50. But my target audience, again, is seniors or new users. I'm talking about, hopefully some of you folks will appreciate this. I already have some feedback that said people like this kind of format. It's a little slower, yes, but you do have chapters so you can scroll through them if you want. You can come back tomorrow or the next day or whatever if you're a subscriber. You can bookmark my YouTube site also. And you can also watch this on your smart TVs in your living room if you have the YouTube app, Linux for Seniors. So anyways, more about that. I'm actually going to show you what my YouTube page is all about a little bit toward the end of this video. And I'll point out some features too about some videos that I have on partitions. Subscribe, or at least bookmark this. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use boxes for my demo. So I'm going to do this absolutely from scratch. So I have already downloaded an image that is Linux Mint, and the host system is also Linux Mint. So we're going to talk about Linux Mint 21.1 Cinnamon. You can see the download size there, and you can see that I downloaded that, today. So I'm creating my virtual machine. I am just picking a number out of the hat. We're just going to make it 4 gigs. You can look at the minimum specifications on Linux Mint's website if you like. But I am just going to do 4 gigabytes of memory and 40 for my storage, virtual storage. And now as this thing boots up, it'll boot to a smaller screen, and then I'm going to resize the screen resolution. So again, you would start out on your installation medium, similar to this. When it boots up, it will boot up to a very similar menu that I have on my primary system. And then I'm going to resize the screen, and then I'll give you some tips as we go. And I'll talk about quite a few things in this video too, for some of that information that user requested. So right now it thinks there's a connection because it's a virtual machine, that it's an Ethernet connection. I'll talk about that in a second after I resize the screen, because I think for the most part this is too small for most users. So let's pick that screen resolution, and hopefully that is better to look at. I can't get, well, I'm going to leave the top bar alone, but this one generally is where the end is right here. So the first thing you want to do when you open up the screen is head on over to here. And let's assume that your connection is Wi-Fi. Click that and sign into your network. As long as you get online, we're ready to go. I want you to be aware that you can also test this out. And there's a lot of tools in here that I'll talk about as soon as I start installing. And while it's installing, I'll talk about those tools to kill the time in between the file installation. So the first thing we do is after we get online is we start the installation. And we open up the installer. Install Linux Mint. It's actually fairly intuitive, but there are some options for you. And I'll talk about this as I go. So you got the welcome screen. Pick your language. Okay? Then I'm going to hit continue. I'm going to use English. The next object is pick a keyboard layout. I'm going to also pick English. These are clickable. Okay, and then I'm going to hit continue. It's fairly intuitive. Installation multimedia codecs, I do recommend that you install if you want your players to play the video formats and some things on your websites to render properly. That's what my suggestion is. You can also omit that and continue. In other words, just continue if you like. I do like this feature, and I'm already online, so it's only going to take probably an extra minute or so to install. As it's preparing all the information, I'll stop here for a second. So the thing has currently detected no operating system because I'm in a virtual environment. So the top choice for most new users that know nothing about any of their hard drives and stuff will be to pick this. However, if you are wanting to do GParted in here, you can. GParted is installed. It's used to partition disks. So if you have a current disk, you can actually partition it before you start this installer. You also have another tool, and that is called gnome-disk-utility. I also have a video on this. I have videos on both of these currently on my YouTube site. I'll point them out toward the end of this video. The computer has detected what would you like to do? Well, in most cases, if you don't know anything about partitions, select this. However, for your other users that know a little bit about this, you can click some of this other stuff. Use LVM, Logical Volume Manager. So creating single volumes or multiple volumes or entire disks. And you can look up that LVM buzzword also on any search engine for better definition than I can give you here. Erase disk and use ZFS. I believe ZFS was created by Sun Micro for Logical File System and Logical File Manager for like enterprise class storage, pool of multiple disks, single entity management, that kind of thing. All right, again, you can still look up this buzzword if you're curious. You can also encrypt the Linux Mint installation. You will have to choose a security key if you do this, on either this one or that one. You don't have that option if you hit none. Okay? So I'm going to choose none because I'm not too sure about all these things that this guy was just talking about. In other words, me. So when you do this, this is going to go to the next step unless you hit something else. If you do, then you're creating or resizing the partition yourself. That's going under the assumption that you know how to do that kind of stuff. When you hit continue, you'll be presented with some other options. But let's just assume I wanted to use the basic. What it's going to do is create your disk with an extension 4 file system. That's the standard for Linux Mint. Extension 4. There used to be extension 3 and some others. There's also BTRFS, but that's not an option here. I believe it's extension 4. So if I hit installed now, I believe it makes a reference to it right here. Okay. So now I'm going to write the changes to the disk. In other words, whatever disk that you picked, in my case, there's only one. You may see some options if you have more than one hard drive. In that case, I would be really sure about which disk you're installing this on. If you're not too sure and you don't want to run the risk and you have more than one hard drive in your machine, hopefully you know how to disconnect it manually if you're absolutely wanting to do this, safely, if you want to call it that. Other than that, you will have a selection if you have multiple disks. I just don't have that in the virtual manager. I'm going to hit continue. So since I chose the simple installation part, I get to go to the next step. It's basically pick your time zone. These are clickable. So that's Berlin. You can start clicking in here, Zurich and Paris, France, different parts of the United States like Denver, Colorado, Los Angeles, Juneau, Alaska. All right, just clicking around, Vancouver, Canada. I'm going to use Los Angeles. I'm in the Los Angeles time zone. I don't live in LA, but I'm in their time zone. Now I'm going to hit continue. All right, now it's stuff that you need to type in. What's your name? Well, you can put in whatever you want. I'm going to call myself Mr. Senior. So what's your computer name? You can leave that silly looking name, whatever your name is, but I'm going to erase that and I'm just going to use the word test. Okay. So that's what I'm going to use. All right, I'm going to use Mr. something. How about Mr. Senior? It's a good enough name for a user. Or put it in whatever username you want. You normally want these in lower cases. I don't even believe it'll take an uppercase, but maybe it will. But my naming conventions for users usually always lowercase. Password. I'm going to just make up a password. I'm going to make it short. You know, use your best judgment when you're actually doing this for sure, for live. You make a decent password that it's not easily guessable. Now, the next item I'm going to talk about, since I've been around Linux for 25 years, I've heard of all kinds of nightmare stories. I heard one specifically, even with someone that actually had a Linux system on it. They chose to log in automatically, and they had a laptop. They went to a coffee shop. They mistakenly left their laptop on the table while going to the restroom. Yes, that was a poor decision. But what happened in the next step is because the person who stole their laptop was able just to open it and actually have access to all of their personal files. Yeah, that's the nightmare story you don't want to have. You want to be able to at least require passwords. So even if the person stole your computer, they'll have a harder time getting in there. Okay? It's never a good idea to have your stuff stolen. I understand that. Now, you may be saying, well, I'm doing this from my home. I don't really have a problem with using that. Do you have kids? Do your kids like to play? Let me put it this way. If you have like a child that is able to turn your computer on, and then if you have this set to automatically log in, they can start playing with your computer right away. Because you didn't require a password. So if you are going to let kids use your Linux Mint, for instance, I would actually make another user, and you can do this rather easily once this is installed, and create a standard user. That way they can install programs, and they can't make system changes, and it'll have to ask you to install stuff for them. That's what I would recommend if you're going to allow kids to use these kind of computers. All right, enough on that. This is just my recommendation. It is still your computer. All right, since I did not choose to encrypt the drive, I have one more chance to encrypt my home folder though. And I've heard mixed stories about this one, that sometimes it slows your hard drive down, you know, that kind of thing. Are you using a solid state drive? Are you using a spinning hard drive? You know, that kind of thing. Well, that's all up to you. Encrypt or not encrypt. If you're not too sure, I would just leave it off. But more importantly, this is my recommendation for some security. For some security. Let's move on. So now it's going to start installing your system, and you'll see a progression bar. And then you can also look through here. So you can find my channel, Linux for Seniors, on YouTube, if you have a YouTube app on your smart TV. Or you can find it on, well, YouTube period, if you have any kind of computer. All right, we have a couple of things with music, and then we have some video players. Do you remember those codec selections and codecs? You know, for media players to play videos? That's one of the reasons you want to install that. All right, so there's a lot of things in here. If you're not sure what GIMP is, it's like Photoshop. All kinds of little toys, including LibreOffice. Now, while that's installing, I'm going to go back down to here. This is my bootable medium that I'm installing Linux Mint on. I'm going to talk about some tools that are available to you on here. There's a full file manager here called Nemo. And when you bring up your other system, you'll see it also. Wanted to point that out to you. The other tool that's on here is Timeshift. So when you actually reboot this machine after you install this on your hard drive, you're going to be asked to activate Timeshift. And after you do, it'll have a green shield on it. And you close it. And then it's going to quietly make backups, as long as you stayed logged into your system on most days for more than 5 to 10 minutes. Makes a proper backup, in other words. So someday you come in and you can't log into your system anymore. And you're trying to figure out, do I need to reinstall the system? You know, before you do that, open up your Timeshift utility, providing you activated Timeshift to begin with, and you'll be able to do a system restore. Let me open the utility up. I usually just hit finish on the installed copy. Okay, so when you first bring this up on your installed copy here, let me walk you through the process. rsync is the most common. BTRFS is another file format that you can use with Linux, but generally rsync is used for this kind of purpose. I also use rsync for other purposes, but I'm going to hit next. All right, so there's no snapshots on my system because it's a virtual machine, but it normally will have your hard drive is where that's stored. And now I'm in the live mode, which is a restore only. So in this live mode, under your system, not a virtual machine like I'm using, it will scan your hard drive for restore points. Let me move this out of the way because it's done installing. And I'm going to deal with this box last. And that's how quickly that was done. Now, it will have restore points, and you just find the date that you want to restore your system, click it and hit restore. In 10 minutes, you're pretty much done. Reboot your system, and you should be able to log back in. There's another tool that I want to talk briefly on. It's called boot repair. Okay, that's also found here. What is that used for? Well, let's say you are booting up your Linux Mint. Maybe you have a dual boot system, like Microsoft Windows and Linux Mint, for instance. Something happens to that bootloader, and you can't boot your machine anymore. Well, that boot repair tool is going to walk you through a process to fix your bootloader, your Grand Unified Bootloader file, GRUB. All you do is follow the directions on it. Normally, it will open up to a small screen, and it'll ask you questions like this. Do you want the software to automatically update now? I usually choose no and allow it to go to the next section. Okay. And it will give you two choices. Repairs most frequent problems. This is the one I would choose. When you open this up, it'll also ask you to open up this box here called Terminal. Okay. So that's the current one on the installation medium, and it'll more likely be the same user on yours, Mint. And you would just follow the direction of this box, and what this is used for is copying and pasting. You will be copying some text in here on this after this starts its process. It'll tell you to dump it in here and perform actions. And once it's finished, you go to the next screen. And I think you have to copy 3 more lines or something like that and dump it in here and then continue. And then that process takes about 10 minutes, so sometimes 15, depending on your speed of your computer. And you're back to a boot screen without reinstalling your whole system. I didn't perform anything, that's why it's complaining. So that's just 2 utilities that are on there. So I'm going to talk about this next, which is the disk utility. I'm just going to give you a place where you can find a complete information on that on my YouTube site, and also one for GParted. Okay, so again, you don't have to use these tools if you're fairly new to Linux, but I do have an intro video or a long video that is treated like an educational video. Okay, so both of those are found there. Well, now that your installation is complete, I'm going to hit restart, and it's going to ask you to pull your installation medium. Whether you used a USB stick or you used a DVD, you're going to press enter. So as soon as I press enter, it starts to reboot, and I am not going to allow it to do that. I'm going to delete the virtual manager and walk over to my YouTube site and talk about a couple of things. First of all, I'm waiting for the web browser to connect. All right, so I started this on February 9th. I currently am sitting at around 55 videos. My previous project had about 450. My intent is on making simple videos for seniors, for fun and viewing. Linux is for every age though. And we have a lot of seniors that are in different classes. In other words, some of them are just starting to use computers, maybe for the first time. And they're experiencing Linux. We have also medium, advanced users out there also. And I understand that. I'm not insulting anyone. All I'm trying to do is make videos that are simple. Yes, they're long. Let's click in here for a second and allow you to see some of the links on these things. Some of them may be fairly short, like that's 13 minutes. Some of them are long, like 44 minutes or even 50. If you're using a standard browser, these are interactive, so you'll see that. All my videos also have timelines. If you start to play and you hit pause, you'll see those timelines in there. They're chapters. My community tab has some fun information sometimes, or informative information. You can also scan this QR code if you got a smartphone, camera open. You can pause this video right now, and then bookmark me if you like this. If not, if you can't stand videos that are over 2 minutes, then I would say this is probably not for you. All right, so I wanted to point this out if you're using a standard web browser. This is found here, not here. So I can be in the About screen, Community screen, Playlist screen, or Videos, it doesn't matter. This magnifying glass is here. So what is this thing used for? Well, I'm going to show you what it's used for. It's used for looking for keywords. So this video here is on GParted. Okay, it says GParted tool right there. It's not a perfect video by any stretch of the imagination, but it will give you a really good overview and some tips on how to partition USB sticks, hard drives, and creating partitions. So the other one, while it's open, is on the gnome-disk-utility. It's called Part 1. I pointed out both of those are available on your installation medium. Okay, you can also find this utility here already installed on your installed copy of Linux Mint 21.1 Cinnamon. GParted, on the other hand, I think you have to install on the installed version, but it will be available on the installation medium as a tool. If I recall right, I think I had to install it manually. And if you have it installed then on your installed copy, then so be it. But more importantly, these are just videos of how to get a good overview of how to use this stuff. Again, they're not perfect, and they are long. So you can start these videos and stop them if you're a subscriber. If you don't want to become a Google subscriber, for instance, you can always bookmark these things and take a look at the timeline when you stop them. You can handwrite it down on a piece of paper if you like. If you don't want to become a subscriber, that way you can come back to it, and as soon as the video starts, go look at the timeline and scroll over to where you left off. Again, this is my intent is to try to make simple videos. For, like I said, there's a lot of seniors just starting to use computers out there. I've had one gentleman actually comment that he gave up on computers or something to that effect, and he's 71 years old, and he found my video on YouTube somewhere, and he became excited about using computers again. Those are great stories. Those are great stories. Now he's excited about using computers again. It's a wonderful story. Linux is for any age, though. But Linux is also for every skill level. My intent is to start by making simple videos. And as we move forward, I will make some more advanced videos. But again, Linux is for every age. And on that note, I will say hopefully you subscribe or at least bookmark this thing for later reference. If you're curious, this is the Oregon coastline, Oregon, USA. So with that note, I will say thank you for watching, and you folks take care.